What is the real cost of learning to be strong? Of always being the reliable one? Of never showing weakness? From the time we're young, women are taught an unspoken rule: to be loved, you must adapt. You must soften your truth, hide your needs, and bury the most tender parts of who you are. But the price we pay is devastating. We lose touch with the intuitive, vibrant, emotionally alive girl we once were, the very source of our authentic feminine power. Modern psychology tells us this isn't your fault. It's the result of what researchers call developmental trauma, the accumulation of moments when your true self wasn't safe to express. And as long as that younger version of you remains unacknowledged, buried in your unconscious mind, your feminine essence will stay locked away. So, how do you reconnect with her? How do you return to your natural intuition, emotional wisdom, and radiant strength instead of constantly bracing yourself just to survive? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll have a roadmap back to the woman you were always meant to be. And please, watch until the end. This might not just be content you stumbled upon, but the message you've been unconsciously waiting to hear. 1. The psychological roots. When an adult woman finds herself perpetually exhausted in relationships, lonely even when surrounded by others, or reacting intensely to seemingly small triggers, she often thinks, maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe something's wrong with me. But depth psychology reveals something different. These aren't character flaws, they're echoes from your past. They're the voice of a younger version of you who's still calling out, even though no one hears her anymore. In psychological terms, the human psyche isn't a single unified entity. It's more like an ecosystem made up of different parts: your conscious awareness, your unconscious patterns, and your fragmented selves, pieces of you that were rejected, forgotten, or deemed unacceptable. One of the most significant fragments in a woman's inner world is what therapists call the wounded inner child, the younger version of you who experienced hurt, rejection, or neglect. That girl doesn't disappear. She retreats into the shadows of your mind, into your unconscious. And from there, she quietly influences your emotional reactions, your relationship patterns, and even the choices you make today. Have you ever tried to act calm when someone ignored your text, even though you felt frantic inside? Tried to hide your hurt when criticized? Felt like you couldn't breathe when rejected, even over something minor? That's not you reacting in the present. That's the younger version of you reliving an old wound. And because she was never heard, every time a similar situation occurs, that wound gets carved deeper. Psychologists call this phenomenon the shadow, the part of your psyche that holds everything you don't want to see or weren't allowed to express. For women, the inner child often becomes part of this shadow. She carries the fear of abandonment, the sense of being invisible, the belief that your worth depends on pleasing others. These beliefs form early, when a little girl's emotions are dismissed by her parents, when she's told not to cry, when she's compared unfavorably to others, or simply when she isn't accepted for who she truly is. You might think these are trivial moments, but a child's psyche can't rationalize like an adult's can. When rejected, that little girl doesn't think, "This is my parents' issue." She thinks, "There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough to be loved." From that moment, an unconscious blueprint forms: please others to survive, or be yourself and be abandoned. This is the first psychological mechanism that causes so many women to lose themselves from a very young age. And here's where it gets really painful. This wound doesn't heal on its own. It transforms into an invisible script for your life. You keep attracting relationships that mirror the original pain. You fall for emotionally unavailable partners who remind you of a distant parent. You work for bosses who criticize you constantly, recreating the feeling of never being enough. You befriend people who take advantage of your kindness, just like you were taught to give endlessly as a child. This isn't coincidence. Psychologists call this repetition compulsion, your unconscious mind, trying to recreate the old wound, hoping this time you can heal it. But without awareness, you just relive the pain over and over, never able to break free. The danger is believing this is just who you are, that you're unlucky in love. That life always requires you to sacrifice yourself. But this isn't destiny. This is an unresolved past. As one researcher put it, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. There's another layer to this, the role of your ego, your conscious self-image. Your ego helps you adapt to reality, build an identity, and accomplish goals. But when the inner child is deeply wounded, the ego develops as overcompensation. You become the strong woman, the independent woman, the woman who needs no one. You achieve, you perform, you prove your worth. But underneath, you're exhausted. You're constantly protecting the fragile little girl from long ago. Think about a successful woman in her 30s, financially secure, respected in her career. But in romantic relationships, she falls apart. When someone loves her, she panics about losing them. When abandoned, she's paralyzed with pain, as if her world has collapsed. She can deliver presentations to executives without flinching, but she can't tell the person she loves how she really feels. Because deep down, she isn't loving as a grown woman. She's loving as a little girl still searching for the parent who never saw her with gentle eyes. Do you see yourself in this? If so, please leave a comment. Your story might be the wake-up call someone else needs. This psychological pattern is incredibly common, yet few recognize it because society doesn't teach women to explore their inner world, only to be good enough to be accepted. But the harder you try to be loved, the further you drift from your true self. 2. The disconnection from feminine essence. No one is born disconnected from their feminine essence. It's encoded in your soul like an internal compass, the source of creativity, intuition, gentleness, receptivity, and deep connection. But over time, this energy gets stifled, not because it disappears, but because the world makes it unsafe to express. You're told, be strong, but not too powerful. Be beautiful, but not too confident. Be successful, but don't threaten anyone. Under this pressure, feminine energy doesn't vanish. It goes underground. It makes way for protective armor formed from unhealed wounds. This is what psychologists call disconnection from the authentic self. When the deepest part of your soul is locked away, waiting to be remembered. Femininity isn't about appearance or stereotypical gender roles. It's a spiritual state. It's the part of you that receives love instead of constantly earning it. Flows with life rather than forcing everything. Trusts intuition over pure logic. Embraces vulnerability as strength. Finds joy in simply being, not just doing. But for many women, this energy was suppressed early on. Maybe you were taught that emotions are messy, that softness is weakness, that your desires or too muchness were unacceptable. Maybe you grew up in a world that praised achievement and logic while shaming intuition and sensitivity. So the inner child who once danced freely, dreamed boldly, and cried without shame, learned to shrink, to hide her essence, trading joy for performance, wearing strength like armor without realizing it was slowly burying her truth. Developmental psychology shows that the archetype of the inner child is the root of our freedom, creativity, and emotional vitality. So, if you find it hard to relax without guilt, enjoy pleasure without justification, express your femininity without fear, trust your intuition, receive love without suspicion, you're not broken, you're blocked. You've been surviving in a world that demanded you abandon yourself. Imagine a stream flowing through a quiet valley. At first, it's cool, fluid, winding naturally around rocks and trees. It flows by instinct because it's simply itself. But then the stream encounters a massive boulder. To keep existing, it must change course. So it learns to flow through cracks, to squeeze through narrow gaps. It begins to believe that if it flows too strongly, more obstacles will appear. A woman's feminine energy is like that stream, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, but naturally uncontrolled. Yet she imposes rules on herself, outdated beliefs that say, "I'm only worthy when I make others happy." And like the blocked stream, the deepest part of her no longer reaches the light. For the stream to flow naturally again, a woman must feel safe in her body, her heart, and her emotions. An inner child who was never loved unconditionally cannot feel safe opening her heart. So instead of receiving love, the grown woman becomes suspicious and guarded, controlling and analytical, always needing certainty before giving trust. She builds fortresses to protect herself, unaware that these walls imprison her deepest feminine essence. Feminine energy doesn't function through effort or force. It awakens through surrender, presence, trust in life's natural flow. But a woman carrying the fear of being hurt can't let go. She's always on guard, always analyzing, always needing to be certain. And in that vigilance, she falls away from her feminine essence, not because she lacks it, but because she was taught that living in it was dangerous. Think about the last time you didn't dare express your true emotions for fear of being dismissed, or when you chose silence over sharing your needs because you feared rejection. That was the moment your feminine energy was stifled once more. The tragedy is that you think you've matured, become wiser, but in reality, you're repeating a survival pattern from childhood, when your inner child had to suppress herself just to be safe. Restoring femininity isn't a moral lesson, it's a spiritual task, reconnecting with your original soul through acceptance, compassion, and integration. It's when you dare to sit with the parts of yourself labeled weak, too emotional, or too much, and say, "I see you, you have a right to exist. You are me." When you do this, something miraculous happens. You begin to feel deeply. You begin to create freely. You begin to love without fear of loss. You no longer have to push to be recognized. You shine naturally from a source that never runs dry, the feminine essence that's been dormant within you for too long. 3. The path of integration. Modern psychology often talks about becoming the best version of yourself, but that's not the deepest goal of human development. The real goal isn't to become better, it's to become whole. This process is called integration or individuation, the journey of returning to your true self. Integration isn't about adding something new, it's about stripping away everything that doesn't belong to you. The borrowed beliefs, the roles learned from outside, the protective layers you created to survive. It's about facing your shadow, those parts of yourself you once rejected, and embracing them as part of your existence. It's when the inner little girl, the locked-away feminine essence, and the seemingly insignificant memories begin to be brought into the light of consciousness. Integration isn't a vision of dazzling enlightenment. It's a journey downward and inward, to your roots, confronting wounds, making peace with the past, learning to live with your entire being, the strong and the vulnerable, the rational and the intuitive, the light and the shadow. Only when you integrate all these parts do you step out of a fragmented life where you constantly try to be someone else, into a life that is truly authentic, autonomous, and profound. One woman who embarked on this journey shared, "I wore a mask for 30 years. I always behaved the way others expected, always smiled, even when I was shattered inside. But when I began to return to the little girl within me, to the parts I was ashamed of, I realized I had never truly lived a single day. And from that moment, I could never go back." The process of integration isn't easy. There will be times when you feel lost, no longer belonging to the old places, but not yet knowing who you are in the new world. But this is a good sign. Psychologists call it the symbolic death, the death of your false self to make way for your true self to be born. From that disorientation, you begin to feel profound freedom. No longer needing to be accepted because you finally accepted yourself. You weren't born to become an ideal person. You were born to become yourself, whole, full of contradictions, beautiful in a way no one else can define. The journey of integration is the map that leads you home, where you no longer run from yourself. Healing the inner child isn't just a practice. It's a homecoming, a courageous and radical act of self-love. It means understanding that every unhealed wound, every buried emotion, every suppressed need will continue to echo in your relationships, choices, and sense of self-worth until you face them with compassion. You don't need to learn anything more. You only need to peel away the layers created to hide the pain of the little girl inside. Not by reading another self-help book or practicing more techniques, but by returning to where it all began. Meeting the little girl within you who once carried your full essence before the world began to silence her. 4 practical exercises for healing. The first step in healing is learning to recognize your inner child, not as an abstract concept, but as a living part of you that still feels, hopes, and longs for love. Begin by finding a childhood photo of yourself, one that stirs something within you. Hold the photo in your hands. Look at that small face. Gaze into those eyes. What do you see? Innocence? Curiosity? Fear? Longing? Joy? Let the emotions arise without judgment. Gently ask yourself, what did this little girl dream of? What did she believe was possible? What made her laugh so freely? And, more painfully, what made her cry alone in the dark? Then, with compassion, write a letter to that little girl, not from the perspective of an adult who knows better, but as someone who finally sees her. Tell her the words she longed to hear. You are loved. You are enough. I am so proud of you. You never had to earn my love. This act of writing isn't merely symbolic, it's sacred. It's how you begin to rebuild the bridge between who you are now and the child still waiting to be acknowledged, embraced, and understood. Many of our deepest wounds stem from childhood needs that went unmet. Love that wasn't given, safety that wasn't provided, understanding that never came. These unmet needs don't vanish with time. They linger in your nervous system, in your behaviors, in your relationships, whispering, "See me. Don't abandon me again." To begin healing these old echoes, find a quiet place. Close your eyes. Place a hand on your heart and breathe deeply. Then gently invite your inner child to step forward. Picture her as vividly as you can. What is she wearing? What does she look like? Is she shy, angry, silent, or sad? When she appears, ask her with utmost sincerity, "What do you need from me right now?" Then listen. Don't rush. Don't censor what comes. You might hear a whisper, a sob, a forgotten memory. You might feel tears well up before words form. Whatever arises, write it down, let it flow. This isn't about fixing her. It's about making her feel heard for the first time. This exercise doesn't just soften your heart. It slowly restores the most sacred relationship you've ever had, the one with yourself. As you learn to meet your own needs with love and gentleness, something beautiful happens. You begin to reclaim the innocence, wisdom, and radiant essence that was never truly lost, only hidden beneath years of trying to become who you thought the world needed you to be. If you grew up without the love, validation, or emotional safety you needed, that wound doesn't simply disappear. It lives deep in your unconscious, shaping your reactions and your silences. But here's the truth. You can become the parent your inner child always longed for. Start by listening to your inner dialogue. Notice how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake or fall short. Is your inner voice gentle, or is it cold, harsh, and unforgiving? Would you speak that way to a frightened little girl? Probably not. So, why do we speak to ourselves this way? It's time to rewrite that dialogue. It's time to offer that kindness to yourself. Picture your inner child standing before you, maybe clutching a stuffed animal, maybe with tear-filled eyes, maybe just waiting to be heard. Look into her eyes and say the words she's waited a lifetime to hear. You are so loved. You matter. You don't need to earn rest. You are not too much. You are just right. As you begin to treat yourself with the compassion and tenderness of a loving parent, something miraculous happens. You stop seeking validation from outside. You stop begging others for what you can finally give yourself. This is conscious reparenting. It's not about pretending the past wasn't painful. It's about meeting yourself with compassion right now. It's about becoming the safe, nurturing, steady presence your younger self needed but never had. When you commit to nurturing yourself with kindness instead of criticism, with patience instead of punishment, you begin to soften. You begin to heal, and you begin to experience a kind of peace that comes only from feeling fully accepted by yourself. To truly honor your feminine energy, you must slow down and turn inward. Ask yourself, what would bring me joy right now? Not what's expected, not what's productive, not what pleases others, but what would nourish your soul. Carve out a sacred moment in your day just for you. This is the time to come alive again. It might be letting your bare feet dance freely to a song that awakens something wild in you. Painting without a plan, letting emotions spill onto canvas. Sitting quietly with warm tea, feeling the silent strength of simply being. Writing poetry that no one will ever read. Walking in nature and letting your body move intuitively. Do something that awakens the softness and creativity the world tried to tame in you. And above all, let go of the need to control everything. Femininity cannot bloom in rigidity. It thrives in trust. Trust in your body. Trust in your intuition. Trust in your timing. Trust in your worth. As you begin to honor your feminine essence, something miraculous happens. You return to a version of yourself that is more alive, more magnetic, and more you than ever before. Because the truth is, you don't need to become anything. You just need to remember who you were before the world told you to forget. One of the deepest wounds we carry, often hidden behind perfectionism, people-pleasing or emotional distance, is the fear of rejection. This fear rarely begins in adulthood. It takes root in childhood when we're taught, directly or indirectly, that love is conditional. Maybe you were only praised when you were well-behaved, quiet, or accomplished. Maybe your tears were met with indifference. Maybe your true emotions were dismissed as too sensitive. Over time, you began to associate authenticity with rejection. You learned that to be accepted, you had to edit yourself, your voice, your feelings, your true self. But here's the most powerful truth. You don't need to change who you are to be loved. You never did. If you're still watching and finding these lessons helpful, please comment the number 1 below to let me know you're following along. Now take a moment to recall a memory where you felt deeply rejected by parents, friends, a partner, or society. Let that memory surface. Then gently ask yourself, did that rejection truly define my worth? Answer from your soul, no. I am worthy of love simply because I exist. Because rejection isn't always about you. Often it's a mirror reflecting someone else's pain, fear, or limitations. Their inability to love you has nothing to do with your lovability. Healing begins when you stop internalizing the wounds others project onto you. It begins when you stop running from the fear of not being enough and instead return to the sacred truth that you have always been enough. To unlock your feminine energy, you must return to the most innocent, wild parts of yourself, the child who felt connected to herself without shame. Think back. Was there a moment when you felt completely free, uninhibited, bursting with joy? Maybe you were spinning in the backyard, painting with wild colors, singing at the top of your lungs, lying on the grass, staring at the sky, dancing like no one was watching. Close your eyes and recall that moment. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you before the world demanded you become anything else? Then ask yourself, which parts of my childhood made me feel most alive, most like me? Make a list. Let it flow from your heart. Skipping rope, dancing in the kitchen, writing stories, building forts, dressing up and imagining worlds, playing make-believe. Now choose one thing from that list and do it this week. No excuses, no judgment. Recreate the space for your inner child to breathe again. Because the truth is, those playful, soulful activities aren't childish. They're medicine. They're the natural expression of your feminine energy before life told you to tone it down. As you reconnect with these lost pieces of yourself, you begin to awaken. The woman you were born to be, radiant, intuitive, magnetic, and free. So many of us were taught to perform rather than simply be, to be agreeable, to hide joy when it's too big, to hide tears when they're too messy, to hide truth when it's too much. Over time, we learn to keep our radiance behind a mask, fearing judgments more than craving freedom. But what if you could begin to shed that fear? Start by identifying one area of your life where you feel suppressed, where your soul longs to express itself, but your mind whispers, be careful. Perhaps you want to dance in the kitchen, speak up in a meeting, wear something bold, write what you truly feel, laugh loudly without apologizing, but something holds you back. Gently ask yourself, where does this fear come from? Who taught me it's unsafe to be myself? Who told me I must shrink to be accepted? Then do one small thing to challenge that belief. Dance, even if your moves are clumsy. Cry, even if no one understands why. Laugh loudly. Write without deleting. Speak what's in your heart without packaging it neatly. Because when you allow yourself to simply be, you reconnect with the little girl who was unapologetically free, who sang off-key without shame, who played dress-up without caring what others thought. She didn't need approval to shine, she just was. Let her guide you home. Most of us carry an invisible burden, the belief that joy must be earned. That pleasure is selfish. That rest or enjoyment must be justified by productivity. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that feeling good without doing enough is lazy or indulgent. That belief isn't yours. It's conditioning, an outdated program. But your soul doesn't thrive in deprivation. It blossoms in joy. Today, I invite you to do something simple yet radical. Choose joy. Make a list, a real list, of things that bring you joy but serve no practical purpose. Things that make you feel soft, silly, inspired, and alive. Painting without a goal. Singing in the shower. Soaking in a bubble bath. Dancing to your favorite song. Curling up with a book that makes your heart ache in the best way. Watching the sunset. Baking something just because. Then choose one thing and do it. Not because it's useful, but because you deserve to feel good. And when guilt arises, as it may, pause, breathe, place a hand on your heart and gently remind yourself, I am worthy of enjoying life without justification. This simple act, embracing joy without guilt, begins to unravel decades of suppression. It tells your inner child, you are safe now. You are allowed to play. You are allowed to feel good. Because healing isn't just about unearthing pain. It's about reclaiming your right to delight in being alive. The next time you feel that familiar self-doubt rising, whether before a tough conversation, a creative risk, or a vulnerable act, pause. Ask yourself, if my inner child were here right now, what would I say to make her feel safe? Say those words aloud to yourself with love. I'm right here with you. It's okay to be scared. You can still show up. Your voice matters. You're doing your best, and that's enough. Each time you speak gently to yourself in moments of fear, you rewrite the belief that you must be perfect to be worthy. You plant seeds of confidence, and slowly you rise. Because the truth is, confidence doesn't come from never falling, it comes from knowing you can get up again and again without abandoning yourself. Confidence also comes from affirming your worth. Find that childhood photo again. Hold it gently. Look at that little girl. Tell her, loudly if you can, you are enough exactly as you are. You don't need to earn love. You are worthy of kindness, safety, and joy. Feel the truth of those words. Let them touch the parts of you that never heard them when it mattered most. Repeat them often. Let them become the foundation on which you stand. The journey back to your feminine essence is not one of becoming, it's one of returning. Remember that you were once a vibrant, emotional, authentic, light-filled little girl. Remember that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. Remember that your intuition was once your compass, needing no reason to be trusted. And remember that love, creativity, joy, all that makes up the beauty of a feminine soul, have always been within you, never lost, only hidden. Modern psychology illuminates what ancient wisdom always knew. Living disconnected from yourself creates silent suffering. And healing, whether through psychology, spirituality, or the art of living, is ultimately one act: stopping the betrayal of yourself. Stop hiding your pain. Stop growing up in a way that leaves the purest part of you behind. When you sit with that child, when you let her cry, sing, dream, and love unconditionally, you're not just nurturing a memory. You're unlocking the very source of energy buried for too long, the sacred, instinctual, whole, feminine essence. I sincerely thank you for joining me on this journey of awakening. If what I've shared has helped you see the path back to your inner girl, urging your feminine energy to bloom, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Who knows, the next video might arrive exactly when you need it most. Leave a comment below sharing which exercise resonated most deeply with you. Your story might be the light someone else needs to begin their own journey home. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to return to yourself.